Humanianity, a new religious call. Humanianity, religion for us all. Humanity, now we all can see. Humanity, how much better we can be.
Hi, I'm Bill Van Fleet, and this is Humanianity Conversation number 74, recorded on August 21st, 2020. It is the 32nd recorded conversation with my friend Mike. We continued our discussion as to whether a solipsistic viewpoint is a preferable outlook in some way or under certain circumstances, and whether we can or cannot be certain that there is such a thing as reality, that which exists independently of anyone's beliefs about it or perceptions of it. We still have not come to agreement, but we plan to continue working on it. We also talked about the difference or lack of difference between a belief and a definition.
Keep it like this. So
Uh-huh.
last time I think we were talking about, we ended the conversation. We had really started to become a little stumped about why we weren't coming to an agreement, and we started to talk about, the importance of agreement to you, and how that's something that's really part of your core philosophy and worldview, and the importance of it. So I thought, it might be a good idea to take it up from there, and let's
Okay,
talk
but
about agreement.
I've been thinking about
Okay.
yeah, there's something to clarify about that, but I've been thinking about the reason why we were having difficulty coming to agreement, and it began to occur to me that I'm not sure that we really knew what question we were asking. Um, uh,
How so?
the question had to do with solipsism, and the uh, there would be several questions that we might ask, like, is solipsism the right answer? Or uh, is solipsism necessary in some area of thought? Or does solipsism have value, and is that value greater than some alternative to solipsism? And maybe there's other possible questions.
Hmm.
Um, so I was not sure that when we were trying to see where we disagreed, whether we knew what question we were addressing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we were just talking about those two worldviews, solipsism and a more what I would describe as an empiricist um, point of view. And I think that where I'm coming from with adopting a certain worldview is not necessarily a utilitarian perspective. I'm not thinking to myself, which point of view gives me more utility in my life. I mean, I do that in certain situations. The point of view I was coming from in our conversation is what's most likely to be most accurate in terms of the way things are phenomenologically in my own brain. But that's a good point. I have thought about that this past week in terms of, what's the utility of this exactly? And, that's one of the questions I think you're asking is which point of view, and can you take a utilitarian point of view versus, I don't know, what I would argue more of an ontological point of view in terms of what actually exists.
Well, we need to back up a minute. See, I noticed that you ended a sentence with in my, it was something like in my brain, or in my, um, and so that was a, that involves certain assumptions, I think. And so I think again, we're not really clear on what the question is.
Well, why don't you pose a question that you think would be helpful?
Well, I think the biggest issue that we're talking about is whether there is such a thing as reality. And reality is defined the way that I'm using it, has all different kinds of meanings, is that which exists independent of anybody perceiving it or having beliefs about it. And what that means is that then one's beliefs and perceptions can be more accurate or less accurate. And the idea that there is this more accuracy or less accuracy implies that there is some standard. And so the standard would be reality. And of course, from what we've talked about, I believe that when we're that our only connection, so to speak, with reality is our ability to predict.
Right.
So and I think that is an absolutely essential part of our understanding, to the limited extent that we humans are going to be able to, quote, understand, that is kind of like the most important. And for example, everything that we do, like I've said this before, everything we do is based upon a belief as to what will happen if we do it. That's a prediction. And we are able to make mistakes, and they can be significant. They can lead to favorable results, but they can also lead to bad results, and more frequently do.
Go ahead.
So so that's why I believe that one of the most fundamental conclusions we can draw that would be appropriate to establish as an axiom is that there is a reality, that one which all that I mean by reality is that we can make mistakes, and that it's important not to make mistakes.
So
our lives are dependent upon making as few mistakes as possible.
I think that what you're doing, I think I have a couple of responses to it. My first response is what it seems like you're doing, which is completely appropriate and something I do from time to time. And actually, I do it all the time when I'm living my daily life, is you're taking a utilitarian point of view that, you know, in order for me to live, I need to make certain predictions. I need to assume certain things. I need to act as if there is a reality like you described, or I simply would not be able to function. Now that
when you use utilitarian, I am worried that I don't necessarily understand what you are meaning, and that other people, if anybody ever views us, will understand. So the use of a label like that tends to
okay. So what I mean by that is, it seems like what you're saying is that in order for me to live the best I can live, in order to be live most effectively, it behooves me to assume that there is some kind of reality that I can be more accurate or less accurate against when I go to the store across the street, or when I decide to ask for a raise, or whatever it is I decide to do. So you're answering the question from a very practical point of view. Is, does this viewpoint have utility in my life? Does it what benefits do I derive from it? So that's what I mean by utilitarian point of view, the point of view you're taking.
We also can ask the question as to whether the alternative would not be possible. And I'm not even sure how one could hypothesize that, because if we were not able to predict anything, then it would be like we couldn't do anything. There would be no. I don't, and in fact, the only way that there can be planets and plant and animal life and cars and so forth is if things behave according to certain rules. And we, scientists look for those rules. What are the rules that govern what happens and what comes into existence, et cetera, et cetera. Go ahead.
I see. I think you're making an unnecessary assumption and coming to a conclusion about what a solipsist point of view, or trying to understand things from a phenomenological point of view, implies. It doesn't imply nothing exists and I can't function. What it implies is that I can't know for sure. It like I've said before, it implies that everybody should by default assume a degree of humility about the level of confidence they have in things, and that they cannot know things the way they really are. And if you look in things in greater detail, and like we're doing now in a much more technical forum, from a much more technical point of view, that you kind of really can't be sure about anything. And that should inform fundamentally how you live your life. It doesn't mean that you can't
wait, before we get too far away from that.
Yeah.
See, the problem here is that I absolutely agree with you. What you're talking about is something different. I was talking about whether there is a reality or not, whether it is possible to make mistakes or not, and so forth. You're talking about the level of confidence that you should feel in your beliefs or your perceptions, and that that one should be humble and recognize that one cannot be 100% sure of anything, and so forth. Well, absolutely, that has nothing to do with the previous thing. In other words, one does not have to be solipsistic in order to have the awareness that one can always be wrong.
Oh no, you could certainly have other belief systems. Solipsism doesn't have the monopoly on humility, and
Okay.
It's not at all.
Mm-hmm.
But it certainly is. If you really live by it, it certainly implies and insists upon the most humility about everything, even the belief of solipsism itself. See, when you're saying to me that reality does exist, okay, that's
that reality what?
That there is a reality out there that does exist. Okay, that is a confidence that I think is not necessarily due.
Well, it, what I mean by that there's a reality is that we can make mistakes, that that whatever belief we have can be incorrect, that it is that is independent of our beliefs.
Yeah, but
And
it's not.
well, it's independent. In other words, it doesn't change. I don't change reality. The concept of reality is that one can be completely sure about something and still it not be correct. And so it's like the acid test is whether things turn out to be the way that you perceived them to be or the way that you believe them to be.
But that doesn't necessarily mean, that doesn't necessarily reflect upon the true nature of, or the existence of reality. It simply reflects upon that your own expectations prove to be incorrect.
How can what does it mean to be incorrect?
It means that the expectation you thought was going to happen did not happen. There's nothing to do with any kind of insistence upon reality out there. We talked about this last time. In fact, people do this all the time. I mean, I see what people self-contradict themselves all the time. They continue to have belief systems, even though they're non sequitur in nature and they are self-contradictory. And within that person's, I'm going to not use any fancy philosophical terms, within that person's mind, within that person's subjective experience, that truth of, or that the truth maintain. No, it says no. There's no uh-oh.
Yeah, truth. What does that word mean?
Truth is within somebody's head. My mother, yes, it absolutely is. My mother or my grandmother could see a rocket going to the moon and say, that didn't happen. That's not true. She could touch the rocket. Some people could touch the rocket and say it's a hologram. Some people could say about COVID-19 or about climate change that it's a conspiracy theory from aliens and Santa who look like Santa Claus. For those people, that's what's happening. That is truth.
Wait. Let's stick with this for a second, please.
Truth is localized within the person's mind.
See, this right now is where a problem comes in. The original meaning of the word truth would be very related to, quote, reality. But what's happening is you are changing the meaning in the postmodern sense, so that you're saying, well, what's true for me may not be true for you.
No, it's not what I'm saying.
Oh.
And I think that this is, I'm saying that's not what's true for me, what's true for you. I'm saying truth, as we understand it, can be opposite. Truth can be truth. You can have something, you can believe something and consider it to be true. I can believe something, consider it to be true. They'd be completely opposite, and they are both true at the same time.
No. Yeah. One of us.
Let me address what you do this before. We talked about this last time. You're appealing to a dictionary.
One of us can be wrong.
No, you're making an appeal. We talked about this before last time. You're making an appeal to a dictionary definition that is a colloquial use of a term. It is not appropriate to use those colloquial terms when we're having this degree of detail and technical conversations about the nature of existence.
Why?
Because the colloquial use of terms reflect how the common person, how most people use the terms. And most
Yes.
people
Yes.
most people do not think in their everyday lives about these kind of concepts and this level of technical detail.
Yes, I know. But still, uh, what uh, if a person believes that such and such is true, they can find out that that belief that it is true is incorrect. And then they will realize that that belief that they had was false.
Why do you think that implies in any way the existence of a reality? How do you show that from that? How can you show that from
What
that
I,
event?
what I go back to is that um, if we mean by reality that which is so independent of anybody's beliefs about it or perceptions of it, then the ability to make a mistake is based upon that. A person can be wrong. A person can find out that what they believed was not true,
Right.
even though they believed it was true. See, to say, I believe such and such is true, just me is a way of saying, I believe it.
You're not saying anything about reality. You're trying to define reality and imply its existence by using words and concepts like belief.
Yeah.
You're not showing that reality exists independently of someone's belief about something. That's the problem I'm having with this argument.
Well, uh, the reason that I'm saying that it does exist is we know that we can have increasingly accurate beliefs, that our beliefs can be very inaccurate, that we can be wrong, or we can apparently be right, although we could find out later that, well, actually we're still wrong.
But
But
you're
there's
doing
a
it again.
standard. But
But
there's
you're
a standard.
but you're
But
doing
there's
it
a
again.
standard. There's a
Using
standard.
beliefs. You
There's
try
a
to do that without using the word belief.
there's a standard against which one is um, comparing one's belief, and it.
You're you cannot. I would let me think right. I would love it if you could if you could make an argument that reality exists without using the word belief or anything that implies belief. That's the crux. If you can do that, I mean, solipsism would shatter.
Well, but belief is a in our conversation. I thought we had some agreement about um, what beliefs are. That um, everything we do is based upon a belief as to what will happen if we do it. Now, that belief may not be conscious. We may not be aware of it. When you picked up your cup and drank something, all of that was based upon your belief that that's what would happen, that your hand would not go up and hit the ceiling of the car, or that what you tasted uh, would taste like vinegar.
I think that I would have some exceptions about it. And I think there might be different kind of beliefs, but let's just accept for a moment that definition of belief. That doesn't kind of address my objection, so to speak. My objection is you keep defining. Well, let me see if I could highlight this in more detail
Uh-huh.
and explain to you in essence how you're basically supporting a solipsist position while trying to argue that you're not. The solipsist position says nothing exists except your beliefs. And you're trying to show that reality exists and keep using the word belief. So what you're basically doing is arguing a solipsist position, but you're saying you're not. but I think you really are. You need to show, to argue against a solipsist position, you need to show that reality exists without appealing to a belief or or a similar concept as belief.
Well, I don't think that that is possible uh, uh, one way or the other. Let me ask you, from the solipsistic standpoint, how many people are there?
Well, that's a very important. There's. Let me. I need to write. Before I answer that, how many people are there? I
Mhm.
think this is really super important. You just said that. I said, can you show that reality exists without appealing to the idea of a belief or some analogous concept? And you said you can't. Okay, that's the whole basis of solipsism. You can't know for sure. The only thing you can know for sure about is your
A
own
different
belief.
issue. Know for sure is a different issue. That's I pointed that out before.
Well, right. I mean, we've talked about.
Knowing for sure is knowing for sure is not um, or the issue, the fact that one cannot, quote, know for sure is not limited to or defined by the solipsistic position.
No, it's
It
not.
is,
I don't think solipsist. I think we talked about this last time too. Solipsism doesn't say reality does not exist. It says that reality cannot be known.
that's different. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think, but while you agree with that, okay, well, then maybe we should have a different, I should take a different approach.
Let,
If
let,
you
let,
agree with
let-
that,
wait. Let me be a little bit clearer. Uh, what I was speaking from was from the worldview that I arrived at doing the Mind Body Problem book. And and there, the only connection, and I've said this before, the only connection, so to speak, or indication that we have of reality is our ability to predict and our ability to predict incorrectly. In other words, that we can be relatively more accurate or less accurate. We can make mistakes. Um, if from a solipsistic standpoint, can you make mistakes?
not in using the definition you just described, the way I understand it, no, I don't think so. But you also just said something super important.
So being solipsistic, you cannot make a mistake.
From the way that you described it,
Uh-huh.
you can make it. No, not in the way you described it. Not in the sense that there is an idealized truth out there that you could be right or wrong against. That idealized truth is not out there. It's inside. And you could be right or wrong against that internal belief system, but that doesn't imply anything about reality out there.
You're
See,
comparing your belief system to your belief system.
absolutely.
Well, but that's uh, then I would agree that everything that you believe is true.
Correct.
When you change your belief, truth now changes
Correct.
because you're believing something. And I say that that is a very atypical and postmodern distortion of the meaning, the basic meaning of truth.
No,
That's what I would say.
I would argue that that is the accurate definition of truth, and the commonplace use of the word truth is something that reflects the common person's experience who do not give this further more detailed thought like a philosopher would give it. That's my argument. And
Well,
to
then all your philosophers would be solipsistic.
a great deal of Descartes was Descartes, you could argue, kind of invented. He didn't coin the word solipsism, but he was one of the first people to make that question. How do I know what I'm sensing and anything out there is real. He went into a reductionist and a derivative train of thought, and he got to the idea that, well, I know my thoughts are real. There's nothing before my thoughts. I must be my thoughts. I think, therefore I am. And that's the basis of everything. So there you have Descartes. I could argue Kant was like that. Husserl was like that. Certainly, I think he coined it. Heidegger and his sense of being in the world was also part of that. There's lots of philosophers.
Wait, but
I would argue.
Descartes was looking not for what is reality, but what can he be certain of?
Correct.
He was looking for a belief that he could be certain of.
Correct.
And therefore, he noticed that since he thinks, then he must exist. However, there are problems with it because there's the whole issue of what the self is.
Right.
You know.
So that's you hit the corner on the head. It's what can I be certain of? No, I cannot be certain that reality exists. I can't. I could assume it does. I could say it probably does. It might. I could say it probably doesn't. You can't show that it exists without anything other than what's happening inside your subjective experience. So he would, I think he could be considered one of the first solipsists, although I think it was Husserl who actually developed the word. I'm not sure about that. But there are philosophers who could be considered empiricists who are not, like that at all. Who's that guy I hate? That crazy guy. God is dead. Who said that again? Nietzsche.
Yeah.
I can argue Nietzsche's an empiricist. And I forgot about, I'm not into the empiricist point of view, so I'm not as familiar with those kind of philosophers.
Beginning to use labels.
Yeah, so let's not go there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that, you are, I would say, you are fundamentally solipsistic, but for some reason, you're insisting upon having an excessive level of confidence in the existence of reality, independent of subjective experience, and you're making a whole lot of derivative conclusions based on that assumption that I do not think is warranted. If you're going to be solipsistic, then be solipsistic, which I think your belief system fundamentally is.
Well,
which is why your book helped to convince me of solipsism, the reality.
Yeah, well, then you disagreed with the thesis of the book.
Perhaps.
I thought you agreed with it, but we actually went through it from beginning to end.
Yes.
And we're in agreement the whole time.
I don't think that there was necessarily, I don't think I could agree with the thesis.
We were looking for anything that you were not in agreement with, and we found a place that was indeed had an error in it, which we corrected.
This is a difference between somebody who takes a real solipsistic point of view. There can be multiple truths, and I've said this before, that are contradictory to themselves in nature, but yet they are both true at the same time.
Okay, I think that the problem is that it's what is happening is I am using one definition of truth and reality, and you are using another one. And
talk about that.
So then,
Maybe we should talk about our definitions of truth. I think we've done that before, but maybe we should do it again.
Yeah, okay. Well, remember that a definition is just a cooperative act between two or more people. Actually, it doesn't have to be that. In other words, you could be working all by yourself and become aware of some particular part of your experience, something new or whatever, and you could give it a name. And so only you would, quote, know that the definition of that was as you had set it up. In other words, you put a label on it. Um, but but the reason that we do that, that's we're ultimately, for the most part, trying to cooperate with each other. And our language allows us to do that. But our language only works to the extent that we understand what the meaning of the word, the meanings of the words are that are being used. And that can vary. One pair of people can be talking and agree with each other and use a particular definition of a word, and another pair of people can be talking with each other and agreeing and using a different definition for the same word. But as long as they mean the same thing with each other, then that leads to agreement. Now, if you take one of those pairs and one uses one definition and another uses another definition, then they will not be able to agree. And I think that that seems to be what's happening in our discussion.
If you want to talk about which definition we should use and which is more appropriate in our conversations, I mean, that's fine. But I'll just maybe we could debate this thesis that I said before. Colloquial definition of terms apply to colloquial ways of looking at things. They do not necessarily apply to very detailed, analytical, philosophical, technical talks about the domains and the subjects. So to use terms colloquially is not appropriate in this context necessarily. That's my thesis.
Okay, I understand that, but in a discussion like you and I are having, to take a commonly used word and give it a highly unusual meaning that is almost contrary, almost the opposite of the normal meaning, I mean, the colloquial meaning, would not seem to be optimal.
I completely disagree. It's more optimal because the incorrect, what I would argue, what we're really talking about here is the accuracy of the colloquial definition of the term truth. And
no. The definitions are not, the term accurate does not apply to them unless what you mean is whether the definition being used is the one that is given by the dictionary or is one of the ones given by the dictionary. And the dictionary is just a manual that describes, it's just a report describing how people generally use words, what they generally mean by them.
No, I don't agree.
Really?
I can create the definition of truth to be something opposite that's in the dictionary, but yet the definition that I choose to use might still be less than accurate. But just because you have a definition that is inaccurate doesn't mean it's only inaccurate in context of a dictionary definition. It could be inaccurate based upon the nature of human psychology and the nature of existence.
Wait, see, here is, I think we're getting to a fundamental area of disagreement. To say that a definition is accurate is to see, you can talk about definitions in two different ways. You can talk about the what the symbol, the word, will mean, and you have a description like uh, such and such word means anything of which such and such is true. Uh, that is arbitrary. That is uh, itself is just something decided upon as a tool. It's not a belief. Now, there is another way of using the word definition, and that is whether the way it is being used is the way that uh, X people use it. Now, X could be like the majority, it could be those in a technical field. There's a good example a good example of a word that is used in a technical field and also used, quote, colloquially, and they have entirely different meanings, entirely, although people do not acknowledge that very often. And that is the word energy. People say, oh, I have lots of energy and so forth, but that's not what the physicist
Right.
need. What the person is referring to by the use of the word energy is not anything like what the physicist is referring to when the physicist uses the word energy.
You're,
Uh,
you're, let's just take a look at this worldview you have. So make sure I understand it.
okay.
So what you're saying, and I think there's unbelievably historical implications of your perspective. But I think what you're saying is that um, the only I think is the only way you could the only accurate way to examine ideas is using words as they are colloquially used and appealing to terms in the dictionary. Is that what you're saying?
No,
Okay, because that seems to be the implication of what you're saying. You cannot talk
no,
about ideas or subjects without using terms as they are defined in the dictionary, because that is somehow objectionable.
no, we can make up a term and start using it. And I can make up a term and start using it and tell you what it is referring to. So that will be my definition of that term. Now, somewhere elsewhere on the planet, an individual may also take that same word and mean something else by it, uh, use it in some different way. And I would have no knowledge or awareness of that. Um, but so the um, it is accurate or inaccurate what you believe to be my way of using the term, and it is accurate or inaccurate as to your belief as to the way that other person is using the term, what they mean by it.
But what if the
Mhm.
subject you're talking about is the accuracy of the colloquial definition of a term?
The that's not how the word accuracy is supposed to be used.
Wait. So that means what you're implying is that what is in the dictionary is sounds like is the most accurate definition of all the terms.
No,
How is
no,
that not the conclusion from what you just said?
no. I think we are really coming around to an important difference of opinion here that we have, but it's a linguistic uh, difference. It's very interesting.
I don't think it's a linguistic difference. I'm claiming the colloquial definition of words like truth and belief are inaccurate to the nature of human experience, the way it actually is. It's
No,
wrong.
that's not. Um, Now, you could say something like this, that the that the colloquial definition of word X
Okay.
um, uh, contains within it a belief that is inaccurate. One could say that. Uh,
Okay, I'm down with that.
and that would mean that somebody else could come along and say, well, that definition is not useful because it encourages us or leads us to maintain an inaccurate belief.
Yeah, I mean, I would accept. I think that what you just described, um, that the colloquial definition of truth and beliefs is very problematic and is can be improved upon.
I don't I don't think it is problematic, but I think uh, that there are two separate meanings and that are used colloquially, uh, and so there's the original meaning of the word truth, um, and there is then the corrupted meaning or the new meaning that was introduced when postmodernism um, uh, became a movement. Um, and the way, and this is outlined in my first book about how that happened. Um, see, I don't know, your nonverbal communication is that
It's so hard to get wrap my head around this. I'm trying really hard, but what you're saying is that almost every famous philosopher who's dealt with things like truth, existence, belief, um, who basically reoriented the definition of those terms used colloquially, was wrong. And it's almost
I don't know why you're saying that.
you're saying, by understanding what you're saying,
Well,
the,
let's back up. I,
the colloquial definition, you cannot claim the colloquial definition of a term in a dictionary is wrong. That means that a lot of the philosophers
no, no,
that
wait. Here,
I've
here it
read,
is. Here it is. The see, um, what could be wrong is my belief as to what is written in the dictionary as the definition of a word, or what could be wrong is whether what is written in the dictionary as a definition of a word um, is the way that people actually use it, because the dictionary is supposed to report how
right,
people use a word.
most
Uh,
people.
let me go see, but a definition itself is not a belief. Uh, and see, I think that
Let's
you are
talk about
believing
that.
that this. I
Let,
think, yeah, I think this is where a problem comes in.
I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about definitions.
Okay. Um,
Can you make the can you substantiate and make an argument that a definition is not a belief?
yes. But there is a subtle kind of mistake that can be made. Um, um, let's use the safari example. You're on a safari, and this creature runs past you, and you have never seen the creature before. Nobody else has that's with you. Well, you want to study that creature. You therefore want to know when you and somebody else are talking about that creature and not something else, not another creature, an elephant or something. Um, the uh, the procedure of using the label, whatever label you pick for that animal, that procedure can be, um, it is just an agreement to do a certain thing, namely to let that word call to
Bill, can you stop
my,
talking for 1 minute? I thought I couldn't hear you very well before, so I switched to my headphones. And
you sound distant.
man, I hate you. Okay, never mind. Keep going.
Your microphone is way up.
All right,
Uh,
I'm turning it up.
no,
Keep
no,
going.
no, no, no. The microphone attached to your earphone is way up. It's away from your mouth.
Oh no, I was just trying to hear it through here, through my ears. I was trying to hear you better.
Okay, but the reason that I could not hear your voice very well was because the microphone was not down close to your
I
mouth.
couldn't hear your voice.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So please continue with the safari example. You have the animal.
Well, I hope that we can stay on track.
Yeah,
I'm not
start from the beginning.
okay.
I think, can you show, I asked you, can you show that a definition is not a belief? Make that argument.
Yeah, a definition is just an agreement to let a particular symbol, a word, stand for anything that has properties X, Y, Z.
So that you're saying a definition is an agreement?
Yes, it's an agreed way of using a symbol.
Okay.
It is not a belief.
Don't I have to believe in that agreement for it to exist?
You have to, uh, yeah. Now that's a subtle distinction that I was trying to point out. Uh, yes, you then develop uh, the belief that that has been the agreement, but that's not the same as the agreement itself. Um,
Well, okay, right. You're defining a belief in terms of reality. You're defining a belief in terms of how accurate it is against an idealized reality. Right? Is that how you're using the term belief here?
uh, uh, Going back to the way that I've always used it, and that is really the meaning that is most common among everybody, unless they get involved in, well, I don't have any beliefs, because that implies religion or stuff like that. But uh, beliefs are models in the brain of something about the world. Uh, and uh, that's what, uh, with the model, that allows us to predict what will happen if we do certain things, or what is likely to happen given the circumstances. So, driving your car, every time you turn the steering wheel counterclockwise,
Yeah.
it is because your brain has the belief
So, right.
that will make the car turn left.
So let's go back to your example of the agreement.
Okay.
The agreement, an agreement is something that happens in your brain. right? Is my understanding you correctly?
Well, I guess so,
Okay.
but
So the belief is something that happens in your brain.
well, but it's not everything that happens in your brain. Um,
How so?
but uh, you can experience fear uh, and not even know what you're afraid of. But that gets into more complex things like there can
But
be
what
an
you don't know, but
there
what
can
you
be
don't
an
know that you're afraid
there,
of,
there can
that's
be an
still in your head,
there.
your brain.
See, I'm a little bit worried because I think when I start speaking, uh, you go to your belief system and are constructing an answer or something, or not your belief system, but well, whatever it is. Um, but I was not even finished with what
Yeah,
I
you
was
weren't
saying.
finished. Go ahead. I apologize.
The well, um, see, some of what happens is we go in different directions. We don't stay on the same path.
Well, I
So
think
talking about definition is not a belief, but we can have a belief that such and such is the accepted definition of a word,
right, but
but that's not the definition itself.
I understand that. Okay, then, but it's a belief in the sense that it is independent of anything happening in reality. It's all here. That's the relevant portion of this argument that supports a solipsist point of view.
Well,
I would argue.
well, you are moving into your solipsistic worldview, uh, but I'm talking about what in general is so. But that's a different issue than whether a definition is a belief. You can have a belief that such and such is the accepted definition of something. Yes, that's a belief, the accepted definition. But the definition itself is not a belief.
Let's track back to the person who
Let me
coined
wait,
that
wait, wait,
definition.
wait, wait, wait. Let me get.
Let's track back to that.
Wait, wait,
Bill, I
wait,
can
wait,
show you
wait,
wrong.
wait, wait,
I can show you
wait,
wrong in a very
wait,
simple
wait,
example.
wait, wait. A car is not a belief, but the belief that the car exists is a belief. Or when you look at the car and you say that's a car, that's a belief.
Let's
That's
track back to the first
the car,
person.
but the car
I
itself is not a belief.
I
The
can show you wrong. I can show that's not accurate.
the definition itself is not a belief.
I can show. Let's track back to the first person who invented the word car. Are you telling me that that person, the use of the word car, has some uh, absolute existence outside of what that person believed? That sounds like the theory of forms from like Socrates. The car has no absolute existence or absolute thingness outside of what that person decided to call it. It's a belief.
Now I'm lost here. I'm sorry.
I understand that once the definition is established and we believe in the definition of a definition that this is what it is outside of any kind of belief.
I didn't follow that. Believe in a definition of a definition. That did not make sense to me.
When I am being raised and somebody tells me the definition of the word definition is this, okay? Okay. I
Well, wait. Now,
believe in that what I'm told.
why are we saying the definition of the word definition? Why did
Because
we
it's
say that?
because I'm getting what I'm trying to do here is highlight the difference between what you're arguing for, which is once the definition is already in existence, and what happens when the definition first comes into existence. They're two different things. And by examining how the definition comes into existence.
I'm sorry, say it again, please. I got a little bit distracted. And let me tell you what I'm distracted by.
Yeah.
That I understood, I thought from you that you were going to have to stop at 5:30.
Yeah, I'm getting calls, but this is important. Let's continue
Okay.
until like 5:45. Thank you for reminding me.
Okay.
You have
I have a kind of a commitment to do something at 10 minutes to 6, and I have to get prepared for it.
All right, go. This is really good, what we're talking about now.
Well, we can spend a few more minutes. Say what you had to say.
What I was going to say, okay, let me just summarize it.
Uh-huh.
There is an important difference that needs to be made when you're examining the nature of what a definition is. The nature of a definition that you're appealing to is that when the definition is already defined and in existence, you're claiming that it's not a belief. However, if you go back to where that definition was first created, I believe that I can show that it actually was a belief, and that what you're appealing to in terms of a definition, once it's mature, is the fact that everybody now accepts that definition as something other than a belief. But if you go back in time to see when it was first created, it was absolutely a belief.
I think I understand where it got derailed, what you were saying. When you do come up with a definition, when you let a symbol stand for a particular thing, you do have the belief that that thing exists. So I think that that belief you're confusing with the definition. The definition is just the establishment of a label for this thing that you believe exists, which may or may not exist.
That's important.
I believe that a unicorn exists. Okay. What do you mean by a unicorn? Well, it's a horse with a horn. Okay. So the definition, oversimplified, of a unicorn is a horse with a horn. That's the definition. The belief as to whether that entity exists or not is a belief. But we have to make a distinction between the use of the word and beliefs about whatever it is we're using the word for. Does that next time?
Next time.
Okay. Well, I know I have a little bit of time pressure coming up because I thought you were going to have to stop at 5:30. And
no, and I should have, but I thought this was such a fruitful conversation. I wanted to go a little extra, but I'm having people call me. I gotta call the doctor.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in another month or two, we will come to agreement.
I hope so. After working on it for 3 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, so I'll have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Humanity, now we all can see. Humanity, how much better we